Welcome to Caritas Consciousness Project. I'm Gloria Coelho, and Caritas is dedicated to promoting the evolution of consciousness as the key to individual growth and global healing. We draw from a wide assortment of ancient wisdom and leading-edge studies in science, consciousness, spirituality, healing, and philosophy by hosting online presentations featuring guest speakers and offering classes and study groups all online. You can view over 150 of our guest speaker video recordings on our YouTube channel, which is Caritas Consciousness Project, and also on our website, caritascenter.org. As a nonprofit organization, we rely on the support of our members and donors to keep Caritas going. To support our program, you can make a donation on our website, any page, or become a member with benefits to you. So tonight, I'm very excited to present Andrea
Dutch, Bandelot.
who was born Angela Bandelot in the Netherlands in 1942 during World War II. She studied psychology at the University of Amsterdam. In 1971, she hitchhiked to India, where she met the mother at the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry. She lived in Auroville, South India, mother's experimental city in the making, dedicated to the evolution of human unity until 1978. Her two daughters were born there. Andrea has been living in Santa Cruz, California since 1979, where she had a healing practice. After retiring in 2007, she continues to open and learn from life, devotes her energy and presence in service of family and friends, and dedicates herself to offer her memoir as her small contribution, I would say not so small, to a peaceful world. Welcome, Andrea, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I can't wait to share your story with our audience tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. It's good to see you all.
So let's start with your early years, a little background. A lot happened during your first 3 years of life, even. So tell us about not only the events, but the emotional, political, and moral climate that you were born into.
So my mother, my father, both my parents were born in Germany. My mother being German, but my father was Dutch. So his parents, they were like a part of the colonial merchant class. And they had lived all over the globe, and they now happened to be living in Germany when my father was born. So both my parents were, they were part of the young people in the early 30s who were really like the forerunners of the hippies. That's how I see it. They were rebelling against the Victorian age. And so they were pretty wild and open-minded and multi-sexual and became vegetarian, left the church, all of that. But then the propaganda machine starts to run like it is in this country. And I'm sorry, I'm going to keep coming back to this country because that's why I wrote my book.
Yes, yes.
So when the war starts, my mother happens to be visiting her Dutch mother-in-law who had moved. My father's parents moved to Holland when they saw what was happening in Germany and they couldn't stand it. They were old enough to see what was happening, and they moved to Holland, where they had never lived, even though they were both Dutch. And my mother happened to be visiting her mother-in-law with my older brother, who was already born. Then the war breaks out and the borders close. So she can't go back. Now my father becomes part of the occupation of the Netherlands, of the German occupation of the Netherlands. And so the first 2 years were pretty nice. You know, my parents are really lovely people. They were very happy to have me and my brother, and we were well loved. And then in 1944, in September of 1944, my father finds out through their intelligence circles that the Dutch are planning an uprising against the collaborators. Now, my father being Dutch, he is not only the enemy, but he is also a traitor. So the next day, we have to leave. Now I have a baby sister already. So my mother has to pack up everything. And my father, mother, and 3 little children flee from the Netherlands into Germany for our safety. It's a really bizarre situation where it's the opposite of what most people experience, where they needed to get out of Germany. We needed to get out of the Netherlands at that time. So my father joined CSS in Berlin, and we lived there for a while, and then he gets sent back into Holland very shortly before the war ends with a group of ruffians, of SS ruffians, to undermine the Dutch resistance. It was an insane project because the Americans and the Canadians were already on their way, you know, they were already coming. So we are going back into Holland against the German soldiers fleeing the country for their own safety. It was this bizarre situation. And my father brings us to the north of Holland, where we're supposedly having a roof over our head in a family. And when we arrive there, it's clear that we are not really welcome. And we stay overnight, but my father leaves and does his thing. We don't know where he's going and what he's doing. So then my mother, realizing that she has to leave that house with 3 children on her own, where the situation is already quite dangerous for anyone connected with Germany. And these people, the collaborators, they find, maybe they had already captured an estate somewhere in the north of Holland where they all gathered, I think, for safety in numbers. That they were all together, that maybe they would be safer. So it was a nightmare for my mother and the 3 little ones to even find our way there. I had to
You took
walk.
refuge in a monastery, wasn't it?
That was so before we crossed into Holland, we had gone close to the border, and we stayed in a convent that had been taken over by the Germans. There was nobody from the convent in there. There was just a customs officer and his family was living there, and we lived with them for a few weeks. And as my father was trying to postpone what he had to do, but so when he finally had to go, my mother made what she said, and I believe her, the most difficult decision of her life, because we were actually safe. And but she could not imagine not being with my father, even though she wasn't going to be with him. But so it was it took me a long time to forgive my mother for that, because it was the beginning of horrendous nightmare for us. So we're now in this, we're being, as the war ends, it's just a few weeks after we get there, the war ends, And the farmers and farmhands around the property where we are taking all of us captive. They separate the men away. We don't know where they're going. They steal everything. They're, of course, furious. So the Dutch had just lived through what we call the hunger winter, where people actually had to scrounge around on the land for bulbs or for anything that was edible. People were starving. People died of starvation. It was really a terrible situation. And so they were furious, of course. And that's how we were treated. We were scum in their mind. And so that was not a very good situation for us. There was no, there were pits dug in the garden for us to use as bathrooms. So I am a little 2-year-old and I have to stand with my little legs over this big pit with, you know what? And my mother holds my hands and I'm terrified that I'm going to fall in there. That is like, oh, ugh. Sorry. But, this war. My baby sister is 10 months old and she stopped thriving when they needed to flee our home in Holland back into Germany. She stopped thriving. And at some point, in a few days after my 3rd birthday, she dies. Then there's a crazy situation that the women around my mother, they didn't know anything about children. They told my mother, don't let your children see the baby's body because they will be traumatized and they're so young and pretty soon they will forget they ever had a little sister. Right. That ain't happening. So we were in the dark about this. My first really, really traumatic memory, my very first memory, which was very traumatic, happens the next morning. So I don't know anything about my baby sister having died. We're all standing in a courtyard. All the women and children are standing still. And there's this angry male voice shouting something, I don't know what. And people responding, I don't know what. And I know something is terribly, terribly wrong with us. I know that in my gut, and I am terrified. I am thinking our whole family will be killed. Not in those words, but that was the terror. And it comes closer and closer, and then it comes to us and silence. And for me, it was like, I don't know, it's like the beginning of complete and total disaster. That's how that felt. So the guy had shouted something and nobody is responding. And then a woman in the crowd says something, I don't know what. I'm 3 years old. I don't know what they're saying, what's going on. And it passes. And when it's all over, everybody goes inside and nobody ever knew how terrified I had been. I had to stand still in my terror. I should have screamed and run to my mommy, but that was clearly not safe to do because everybody was terrified, was standing still in fear. I could feel that. So then everybody goes inside and goes about their business, and there's this very strange oblivion that comes right upon the ending of this terrible situation. So that was weird. So that is the beginning where my fears and whatever else go underground in me. There's no conversation about it. My mother doesn't say anything. She doesn't know I was so scared. And I was well in my 50s when I visited my brother in Holland and told him my memory, which had kind of pursued me my whole life. was always terrifying, and I didn't know what it was. And I told him that, and he said, "Oh, I know, that was when Almut had died, our little sister. And her name had not been removed from it was roll call. It was roll call, and her name had not been removed from the list. And my mother was in her grief and she couldn't speak." And that's what that happened.
And then
And
someone else said that the child had died, the baby had died.
Yeah, but I didn't understand what was going on. I
Right,
didn't hear what they said. I
right,
couldn't,
right.
I didn't.
Mm,
And so I had no idea. And
mm,
so the interesting thing there is that I never asked my mother.
mm.
And so I wrote this also in that chapter, that our past was cloaked in my mother's silence. We don't talk about difficulties. When the war's over, it's all over. Now when we finally we get home, now we're happy. Anyway, so that's the very beginning.
Yeah. So it was like something unspoken was
Yeah.
shaping your family. And then is that when
So my father is taken prisoner. The end of the war, the whole group is taken captive, and they're going to court. And eventually, so when we are finally released, my brother and I are put on a train to my grandmother, and so she takes us in. And then after some time, my mother is released. And then we find out that my father was taken prisoner. After some time of living at my grandmother's house, my grandfather had already died. My brother and I were put in a Catholic boarding school because my mother had to work. My grandmother had already raised 7 children. She was also an alcoholic. She wasn't up for raising 2 more children. So we were put in a Catholic boarding school. And undoubtedly, my mother thought, because we could both be in the same school, that at least we would have each other. What she didn't know, being at Catholic school, we were completely segregated. I only saw my mother, my brother. My brother became an altar boy. And so I only saw him in front of the chapel when he was an altar boy. And then I never saw him during our regular days. It was like walled off. They even went to a different school. The
yeah.
boys went to a village school, and we went to a school in a convent.
Mm.
And then my mother would come and visit every few weeks when she could. She would come and visit, and then we would be together. So then I'm 5 when I go to boarding school, and I'm in Catholic boarding school for 7 years, from age 5 to 12. That's my entire childhood, pretty much. That was not fun.
And you've written about the spiritual and moral authority being very entangled with harm.
Well, they knew why we
Because
were in that school because they knew of my father's case. It was in all the newspapers. He was sentenced to death. So it's in all the newspapers. And they know, and they hate me. It's very clear. I'm the daughter of scum. They have to take me in because they're supposedly charitable Catholic nuns, right? But they really hated me, and and I didn't understand why. I didn't understand anything. I'm just sitting there and I'm looking at these nuns with my big brown eyes, and I'm going, what's wrong with them? And they're not safe. They're always angry with me. Yeah, not good. So then what happens when I'm 6? My mother comes to visit, and rather than her talking to us in the beginning of her visit, because she was so upset herself, it's when just before she has to leave us, she stops, She takes my little face in her hands and looks very seriously into my eyes. My brother is standing right next to me. And she says, I have to tell you something very difficult. Your father has been sentenced to death. Now, I believe he's innocent. That's what she said, which I'm glad she did. And she did believe that. And then she said, the only thing you can do is pray. And then she said, you can never talk to anyone about this.
Yeah. What a thing to lay on a 6-year-old child who's already feeling completely isolated and traumatized.
Yeah.
No, because I mean, you're there by yourself. You're not treated in a loving way, to say the least.
Not at all.
And then you have to keep this horrible secret.
Yeah. So all I did my whole childhood is I prayed to this God where I didn't know where he was, but he supposedly loved us. So, so you know, I prayed up a storm wherever I was, whatever I was doing. I prayed for because I realized, and my mother said that my country, because I am Dutch, that my country, my people wanted to kill my father. It was, you cannot integrate that. You cannot, it's incomprehensible. It's just, anyway.
Yeah.
That's what I carried around with me.
Yeah. And these nuns are supposed to represent.
They were called the Sisters of Love and Mercy. They had very little of either of it.
a very misnomer. How were you able to separate your notion of God from, you know, these nuns?
From them, yes, because I trusted. I knew somehow that God, that Jesus and Mary, that they loved me.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that my parents loved me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that in my bones. I knew that I was not put there because I was bad.
Mm-hmm.
I was treated, of course, as if I was bad. But I had a place inside of me where I knew I was loved, and then I was able, you know, whether you could call it a vivid imagination, but I was able to turn to Jesus and Mary and feel their love.
Mm-hmm.
I had that. And then I just looked later, I wrote in my book, like those nuns call themselves the brides of Christ. And I said, poor Christ. It's like, oh my God, really? You're brides? You're all in black and angry and
oh my goodness. What parts of you had to go quiet in order to survive those years?
And I had to lie. My mother told me then to tell people that, why did my father never come to visit? So, but because he was in a sanatorium. Now, in those days, tuberculosis was still rampant. And sanatoriums were places, but everybody knew if you had tuberculosis, you went there for years and you couldn't leave.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a convenient lie, but I was literally told to lie.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's where the truth has become like a central value in my life. You know, it's like, give me the truth anytime. Straight, please.
Right?
Yeah.
So then when you were 12, was it? Or
yeah. So when I'm 12 years old, my father is actually released. My father gets re-evaluated on psychiatric grounds. And he had actually not been in his right mind when so he was only sentenced for what happened in the last few weeks of the war. They had taken captives, supposedly of the Dutch resistance. And you know what happens in war when they have prisoners. The prisoners get tortured. That's what happens even today. It happens in every war. It happens by American soldiers. It happens in every war, because the soldiers themselves are all afraid for their life. And then when they get a prisoner, and the prisoner's in their power, this is my understanding, they get to release their own terror in rage to the so-called perpetrators, the ones who they are fighting, their prisoners. And so that's what had happened. And but then he got a psychiatric reevaluation, and it was clear that he had not been in his right mind. He had been in prison for 10 years, and he was released with the condition that he would spend a year in a psychiatric hospital. He would be free to come and go, but he would be under psychiatric supervision. And so when he is there, so that's of course a total miracle. I've been praying my my butt off for for all those years, and he is actually coming home.
You must have felt that your prayers had been answered.
Say that again.
You must have felt that your prayers had been answered.
Yeah.
And also, if I remember correctly, part of that, part of the reason why he was not in his right mind, as you say, was because he was sure that his family had been killed.
Yes, the Dutch were violent,
Mm-hmm.
and they killed many people. And those were rumors, of course. My father would hear rumors, and he was afraid that his wife and 3 little children had already been killed. And of course, there was no phone connection, nothing, not like now, there's nothing. And so he was insane. I believe he was certifiably insane. Yeah. So he comes home, and then there's an interesting experience. Talk about trauma repeating itself. He comes to visit me in boarding school for my 12th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. It's totally amazing. Can you imagine? He is my father, and it's my birthday, and he wants to take me to the nearby town of Arnhem and take me to a movie. And what was playing was Roman Holiday. You probably all have seen Roman Holiday. You're old enough.
With Audrey Hepburn.
With Audrey Hepburn, yeah. So we are in the theater, and when the curtains open, all of a sudden we get newsreels from the Holocaust. So here, my father and I sitting next to each other in an almost empty theater, and we are bombarded with the most horrendous images, vast pits of bodies, piles of shoes, glasses, ovens.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I can't even describe what that is like to see that as a child. And then the movie comes on without any break in between. Here's the movie, and we laugh, and it's funny, and we're happy, and I'm happily identified with Audrey Hepburn because I also had big brown eyes, and she was so funny. And so when we come out of the theater, we never speak about it. I'm sure my father didn't know what he could have said to me. I think that he was maybe not as shocked as I was because I'm a child, but he may have just been equally shocked because that was all kept very secret. The existence of the concentration camps was kept very secret. They were called workers' camps. Yeah, Arbeit macht frei.
Yeah.
So, so then that also disappears, goes underground, and me together with everything else. And then we're happy to be with each other. And then I go home. After a few months, I'm finally out of boarding school. and I come home. So, and then my father comes home, and then everything changes. My father is this warm, big-hearted, warm, kind man. He adores me. So here I am. I am absolutely nothing. I have had no reflections of myself that were positive. And my mother loved me, but we didn't talk about anything. She didn't talk about anything. She
Yeah.
was kind. But so my father, he puts me on a high horse, which was not bad for a 13-year-old to get a boost in my self-esteem. You know, I'm
Yeah.
like, for him, I'm the cat's meow.
Mhm.
And I am now I came from this backwards Catholic boarding school in the countryside to Rotterdam, where my mother had found a place to live, and went to a Catholic high school in Rotterdam. So that was very good for me. At the first, of course, I felt really, the first year I was there, I failed my first grade because I was not up to par. I had not received proper education. But they
Mm.
had allowed me. We had done an entry exam. All the children had to do an entry exam to be allowed into that school. And they called my mother in afterwards and said, "Well, she flunked the tests, but we can see that she has good comprehension. So we want to give her a chance."
Mm.
So I come in this school, and here are all these girls. Yeah, they were little when there was war, but they don't have war memories or trauma. You know, they're bicycling and swimming and playing tennis, and I don't even know how to bicycle. I'm a Dutch girl. I don't even know how to ride a bicycle. So I was really backwards compared to them. But then I flunked the first grade, and when I came back for the second time through, I was the one who knew all the teachers. I knew what was going on. And I was immediately chosen as a class representative, and they chose me every year for the 6 years I was in high school.
Mhm.
And that was very good for me. I mean, I was deeply unconscious, of course, about all my trauma. I was very dissociated, but I figured that out much later, how dissociated I was.
Right.
Yeah.
Hardly surprising. And how did you, well, I guess at that age, it, it might not have been conscious, but somehow I think as I read your book, I thought, how to reconcile this loving, wonderful father with the history that, you know, that you did find out about, and how did that
You
had to
can't. This is
be,
called cognitive dissonance. I
yeah,
learned
I
that
was
much
just
later
gonna
in my life.
say that, yeah.
Cognitive dissonance. You can't. You can't. My father actually talked to me a lot about all kinds of things, especially spirituality, sexuality, but he also told me about his experiences in the war.
Mm.
Now, of course, he kept the gruesome parts not out of it. You know, I'm his daughter, so he doesn't want to completely terrify me. But he did say that he was sentenced to death because of torturing prisoners. He did tell me that. But he said he had taken on that task because he didn't want to put these people in the hands of these other SS guys that he was with. And he had to make it seem really bad, otherwise they wouldn't have let him do that. But he had a heart for them. That is who he was.
Mhm.
Like a little story to show how that is. When he first came to Holland, he became the commander of a workers' camp where Dutch young men were uh, placed captive as to become part of the war machine. And my father loved them. He wanted to raise them and to educate them in being, good citizens to the great Reich. When I was born, you imagine this, they carried my father on their shoulders around the camp. Now, I can't think of anything that would prove to you who he was.
And their regard for him.
Yeah, that they cared for him because he cared for them. And so one of the things, well, I don't know how much more we should go into the wartime. It's all in the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you grew into your adolescence and you started feeling, at what point or when did you first feel a genuine pull towards something beyond just surviving, something
Oh
towards...
gosh, I don't know. I remember, so the one thing I would like to mention is when my father came home, the first time he came home, we were all so excited and we were all sitting around, and both my father and mother suggested I go sit on my father's lap. Well, I am 12 years old. He has been in prison for 10 years. I kind of put myself on these bony knees and I'm not very comfortable. I'm certainly not leaning into him. I don't know this man. I mean, he's my dad, and I'm happy that he's there, but I have no connection, really, physical connection with him. And then I feel his hands gently around my waist, pushing me off of his lap, and said, "Why didn't you go sit over there?" He did it very kindly. And later, this is my father, he tells me that he had talked to his psychiatrist, that he had gotten an erection. He was shocked. He didn't, and so I had to get off of his lap. So my father comes home. I didn't have no memory of ever being on his lap. And now I'm too old to ever have that kind of closeness with my father. So then I become a teenager, and here are boys, and boy, do I want to be close to guys, I do. Give me some closeness,
Yeah.
So it set me up for what later I understood became a love and sex addiction. I didn't know, we didn't have those words at the time. And I just thought I was, free and did whatever I liked.
And
It was kind of a setup.
Yeah. And then how you in your early adulthood, you hitchhiked to India.
Yeah.
And you go to Auroville.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
At some point, I started studying psychology, and I fell in love with a young man, and we both got our bachelors, and we were both put on a year waiting list for clinical psychology. And this is the hippie days. It's 1971. He wants to go to India. I'm going, oh my God. I didn't want to go. And then I kind of, at one point, I took a good look. I went and looked inside and go, so why would you not go on such an incredible adventure? Because, see, I didn't have a home as a child. So for me, home is my safe place. I never thought that I would travel the world. I travel around Europe, but I would never do what some people do. They go here and there, and not me, No, I'm going to stay here. So I took a look at myself and I realized I was scared. And I had myself a good cry and said, "You're going." Because that's one thing, I will not be ruled by fear, which is an interesting thing that's where I landed, having had so much terror and I stood in my terror. I had to stand alone, even as a 3-year-old. And so that is a strength that somehow came with me in my being, that I was able to do that. So when I saw I wouldn't go because I was afraid, I said, no, you go. So yeah, we went. And
so you went. Andrea, before we go on, It looks like it's getting dark where you are. You're
Yeah,
in
there's not
California.
much I can do about it.
Oh no, there's no light there. There's no light you
I
can
can
turn
open
on.
this curtain here that keeps this light out of my face, and maybe that
Ah,
will be
okay.
a little, yeah,
Okay, that's better. Yeah, that's better.
it'll
I
work
didn't
for a
want you to
while.
fade away. So go ahead, continue. So you go to Auroville and
Yeah, yeah. And when I was studying in Amsterdam, I got a little magazine and it had an article about Auroville. I don't know if you've all have heard of Auroville, Auroville, A-U-R-O, Auroville in South India. It is a city founded by a woman who was referred to as the mother. She was Sri Aurobindo's spiritual companion. And she founded Auroville on a desert, like there was nothing, to build a city where all the people who would dedicate themselves to the building of that city would participate in an experiment for human unity, to raise our consciousness out of our individual needs and identities and all of that, to a place where we could embody human unity. That was the vision. And when I read that, that was the first time in my life that I had hope. I had
Mhm.
no hope. You're coming out of war, and then they dropped the effing bombs, and life was not. I didn't want children. How can you put children on this earth where these terrible things happen? So that was. I cut out the picture of the design of Auroville and put it on my wall. And the other thing that struck me, there was a quote from Sri Aurobindo. 4 words. All life is yoga.
all life
All
is
life is yoga. I had no
yoga.
idea what it meant, but it rang like bells in my universe. It was like,
Hmm.
wow, this is all inclusive. That's what I had been missing in the Catholic Church, you know. I left it when I was 18. Like, I can't do this anymore. And so that was very promising. And so when we decided to go to India, we had one particular destination, and that was Auroville. So when we come there after 3 months travel, we hung out in India and traveled all around the country and went to different ashrams and had all kinds of, my whole travel story is in the book too. It's very fun.
Yes, yes, it is. And there are a lot of Europeans in Auroville.
Yes, yes. When this became known that this city was planned, the first people that came were French. Her mother was French, so there was a connection with France.
Hmm.
And there was, I think, a bus that came with full of young people who wanted to throw themselves into that adventure. And they started. And then people came from all over the world, from America, England, Germany, Holland, a few from Africa, one from Japan, South America, Scandinavia, young people from all over the planet came there because they were drawn to the adventure of consciousness and to creating a life on the planet that was in a higher level than what we are used to. Yeah. So when we came to Pondicherry, by that time we actually, we had heard from people as we were traveling who had been to Auroville. And they didn't like it. Well, they left. Of course, they didn't like it because they weren't supposed to be there. But we didn't understand that. We thought, oh, never mind, but we'll go anyway. So we were thinking to just go for a few days and then go back up to Nepal and from then go farther east to Indonesia. So that was the idea. And we come into Pondicherry and we find out that in 10 days, mother's birthday, her 94th birthday, and that she would give public darshan. So darshan is when the people can see the teacher or the guru in public. So we decided, okay, we'll stay. And then we made friends with an American, Ron. And when he found, he knew, he could see, he got me. He knew that I was supposed to be there. I didn't, but he knew. And so when he found out that we were planning to leave right after Mother's birthday, he said, well, you could write Mother a letter and ask if you can see her in person. And usually she will agree because this may be your only chance in a lifetime to be with her. So I did. And we were told, yes, you can come to see Mother on February 27th. So this adds another 10 days to our stay, or however long that was, 6 days. So then Ron tells us, it's a funny story. He tells us people usually bring Mother flowers. And I'm in a totally no-nonsense place. Like, I don't want any nonsense. I want everything to be just true and clear and simple, and I want it to be right for me. Don't tell me what to do. I had enough of that.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not going to bring her flowers. I don't even know her. I said, if I like her and I will see her again and I want to bring her flowers, I'll bring her flowers. That was my attitude. So Sunday morning, the 27th of February, we are early in the morning. We're supposed to arrive at 9 o'clock. So we're early in the morning. We are leaving the guest house. The guest house was part of the ashram. And the manager happens to come out and he says, oh, good morning. How are you? Where are you going? And we said, we're going to see Mother. He said, oh, wait. And he runs over to the wall, which is overgrown with hibiscus. And he picks us each a magnificent, huge orange hibiscus with a crimson stamen. And here we both carry this wonderful flower all the way to the other. And of course, we accept, it's like, you can't say no to that. So it takes a long time to wind our way up. Mother's on the 3rd floor. We go up the stairs and we wait on the floor. And anyway, it is noon by the time we come into Mother's room. Now, I don't know if you know of hibiscus. They don't like to be picked. And it was already very hot at the end of February in South India. And my hibiscus was sadly wilting. It's like, oh. Anyway, we come into her room and there she is. And by the time I come in front of her, and so the one thing that Ron imprinted on me, said it at least 3 times, make sure you look into her eyes. Because the Indian people, they may just prostrate themselves. That's what they often do in front of the guru. And then they leave and they miss the best part. So he had imprinted that on me. I come in front of her. She's very old. She's sitting bent over. So you kind of have to get down on your knees to be able to look at her. And I bring my hibiscus forward. And my hibiscus opens in full bloom in front of her. And I'm mesmerized. It's like being on acid, This doesn't happen. This can't happen. It did happen. And then there's some movement, like I gotta move along. So I give the flower to her assistant, and then I gotta look into her eyes. Instead of being completely focused on this flower. So I look into her eyes. And she looks into mine. And she is so completely still. I've never seen anybody completely still. It felt to me like she was on the other side of the galaxy. There was this vastness in the silence. And I keep looking, and I know somewhere in me, I know something needs to happen. I keep looking, and I keep looking. And then I hear my own voice say in my mind, open up. And in that moment, we recognize each other. It's like, it's you. That was from me to her, and from her to me. We recognize each other like we had known each other. however many thousands of years ago. We knew each other. We were ecstatic. We were equally ecstatic. Even if we were two, we were the same. It was really an extraordinary experience. And then it was time to move along. And, we can't break our gaze because we're like in rapture. And then I walk into the room and tears start to stream down my face. And I wept for 3 days, wherever I went. So I can't do anything about the light anymore. It's going to be what it is, okay?
That's okay. It's okay. We can still see you.
Maybe you can turn this. Does that make a little difference?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So for 3 days, I weep, and they feel like bittersweet tears. The sweetness because I am beyond thrilled to have met her and myself. Because in that moment, all my veils were torn, and my soul stood revealed to me. And so that was the incredible joy. And then the bittersweetness in it was that it had taken so many lifetimes of looking for God.
Mm-hmm.
That it had taken for for hundreds of lifetimes to come to this place. So we're walking around, we go everywhere, we go to the dining room, we talk with people, and tears are and nobody asks, everybody knows what happens to me. Because they have all seen Mother too. They know what happens when you see her. That may not be the same thing, but everybody has a big, big experience. So nobody was puzzled why I was crying. So after 3 days, we wake up in the morning and it's clear that I'm kind of back on the ground. And my boyfriend says, "So, are you ready to go?" And I'm not going anywhere. I just got here. I'm sorry that this is so dark. Oh, well.
Okay.
That's the best I can do. That's not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah. So that afternoon, I took my boyfriend to the station and put him on the train. And there I was by myself.
And then you stayed
I stayed. Yeah.
For how many years again?
Almost 7.
7 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after a few months, I asked Mother if I could move to Auroville, and she agreed. So then I lived in Auroville, and I met Daniel. He is an American, and we had 2 girls. They were both born in India, in Auroville. And lots of adventures in Auroville. I won't go into all the details. There's some very difficult, and then, of course, very beautiful ones.
Yeah, and you developed a healing practice while you were there.
Well, so the thing about Auroville was nobody tells you what to do. You follow. The thing is, so Mother and Sri Aurobindo did not want followers. They wanted you to find your own truth, to find the place inside of you, like around the heart, behind the heart, which they call the psychic being. And they describe that as the evolutionary part of your soul. It's the part of you, of your eternal being, that evolves over lifetimes. And they call that the psychic being. So they want you to learn to live from that place and listen to that. And so you find what is true for you and follow that. And so you come to Auroville, you basically you land someplace, and then somehow you find yourself somewhere and you get engaged with the work. And so when I ended up in a little, on the outskirts of Auroville, we had a small part of the community that was next to the village of Kottakarai. So Kottakarai was a village next to Auroville, and we had a small group of Aurovillians who had a settlement there. And we had a communal kitchen, And one day I'm in the kitchen by myself, and this young boy comes in from the village, which is right across from the gully, from the village, and he has fallen, his knee is bleeding. We have a little first aid kit sitting around, and I clean him up and bandage him up and send him off. And the next day he comes back with 2 little friends. And the next day he comes back with 5 friends. And so I ended up actually opening a little clinic in the village. So that was it's my nature is to be healing. That's my desire to heal. So that happened. It just happened. And so I opened a little clinic in the village, and I saw about 4,000 people in those years I was there. And it was quite magical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of detail to that in the book that I thought was, very, just beautiful. So how would you describe the mother's spirituality in contrast maybe with what you grew up with, or
there's
not?
no contrast.
No, there's no contrast.
There's no contrast. There's no
comparison.
There's no absolutely zero comparison with anyone.
Yeah.
She and Sri Aurobindo, so she's French. Sri Aurobindo is an Indian, but he was raised when he was 7 years old. His father sent him to England because he thought he was a doctor in North India, and he thought very highly about the British. They had it all together, they were on top. They were more evolved than the Indians were. That is what his perception was.
Mm.
So he wanted his sons to grow up and be raised and educated in England. So Sri Aurobindo, being a genius, he became fluent in Latin and Greek. He studied Italian and German and French because he wanted to read their great works of literature in the original language. And so he was absolutely brilliant. And then at some point, and he begins to realize what England is doing to India. And he already gets together secretly with other Indian boys, and they talk about liberating India. They want India's freedom. So when he takes a boat back to India, sets foot on Indian soil. So he knew nothing about India. He didn't know the language. He was just British. And
he didn't know about Hinduism much.
Nothing.
At that point.
Mm-hmm. Nothing. His parents had given the clear instruction to his caregivers that he was not to know anything about India. Mm-hmm. By the time he came home, actually his father died just before he got there, but his father had actually come to realize the abuse of the British, of how India was abused and profited from all of that. But so now Sri Aurobindo begins to study Sanskrit and Bengal, his birth language, Bengali, and Hindu. So he's already a language genius, right? So he studies all these languages. And then he begins to dive into the spirituality of India, particularly the Vedas. He develops a vision not only for India's liberation, but for the liberation of humanity out of their limited mental consciousness.
Yeah.
He gets that insight when he is actually imprisoned by the British. He's thrown into prison for a year because he's suspected of the bombing of somebody. He was very engaged with the liberation of India. So when he is set free from there, he gets a clear internal direction that he needs to go to Pondicherry, because Pondicherry was a French enclave in India. So there he was safe from the British. The British named him the most dangerous man in India because he published his
That's something.
writings. He
Yeah.
published his writings to inspire the youth of India to go for complete liberation. The government of India wanted to be just part of the Commonwealth, and we're comfortable here with you British, you know. Let's not leave you. They were just so impressed by them. And Sri Aurobindo was not. Sri Aurobindo saw the truth, and he said, India will never be her true self if she is not completely free. So India's freedom was came on his birthday, August 15th,
That's my birthday too.
1948. Oh, that's very, to me, that's a very auspicious birthday.
Uh, I didn't know that that was the day of the liberation of India.
Yeah, and Sri Aurobindo's birthday. Right.
What year was it again?
I think it was 48.
48.
I think that's when India got liberated. I may be mistaken. But so mother, in the meantime, she is born and raised from Egyptian mother and a Turkish father in Paris. They are Jewish and Middle Eastern. And the father was a mathematician or a banker. And the mother was very strict, she came from way upper class from Egypt, you know. Her mother, can you imagine, from Egypt in those days? Her mother, so this is like in the early 1800s, emigrated to Paris from Egypt. So where her mother was born there. So she is also a very special being. She has a little chair and where she likes to sit and meditate. So the parents are completely non-religious and even against all religion. There's like, just be normal, just be rational. That's just a thing. So there was no spirituality of any kind in the family. But she was a spiritual being, clearly. And as she grows up, she has, in the night, she says she leaves her body and she flies over Paris with a robe that she flows over the city, and the souls of the people in their sleep, they come up to her to find healing. That was what she was doing. And she, so to make it short, she ends up marrying a diplomat, a French diplomat, who at some point is sent to India for France as a diplomat. Mother has had all kinds of visions, and she had a vision of this Indian being. She didn't know if he was alive or if it was a spirit. But she saw him very clearly, and he was the main figure that showed up in her visions. And she asked her husband, when you go there, find the sage who can explain this particular symbol. And what she had drawn was Sri Aurobindo's symbol. And he goes there and he actually does find Sri Aurobindo. And then a few years later, she goes with him because she wants to meet Sri Aurobindo. When they get there, she wants to meet him by herself because her husband he thinks of himself as a spiritual being, but she knows better. He's after power, like many people are. Many people who think they're very spiritual are really after power.
Yeah.
So when they see each other, and it's like the beginning of the new world. This is the beginning where the male and the female avatars come together and they become one. They had both the exact same vision for the evolution of consciousness. She did not learn that from Sri Aurobindo. No, she brought that with her.
I didn't realize
on the
that.
exact same page with that. So eventually she moves there completely, and pretty soon, actually, Sri Aurobindo realizes who she is, and he has a small group of friends. They have a little ashram, And he begins to call her mother, because he realizes that she is an incarnation of the Divine Mother.
Mhm.
He can see it because he can see. He's a seer. They're both seers. So when that happens, he said, the work will be done because she is. Because he saw in her a level of surrender that he had never seen in anyone
Mhm.
to the divine. And she said, because he is, I am. Because I am, he is manifest. So this is the vision is of the Supreme, the one where it all starts. The one wanting to know itself, then you need to have two, right? He needs to be in relation. He wants, I'd say he, it's not a he, it's whatever, that wants to be in a relationship. So now you have the male and the female, and the Brahman and the Shakti. And she is the one, the Divine Mother is the one who throws herself into matter. Her body, the universe is her body. That is the body of the divine for the delight of offering herself to him. Where you see the whole bliss, the center of the creation being bliss. The
Mhm.
bliss of knowing one another, of knowing the truth. And that vision they both have, and they carried that forward in what they eventually called the integral yoga. And so I remember one time Mother said, she gave New Year's messages. The last year that she was in her body, she said, once you become conscious of the whole world at the same time, then you can become conscious of the divine.
Mhm.
I must say it was a bit shocking, because I couldn't imagine being conscious of the whole world at the same time.
Mhm.
Could imagine being conscious of the divine.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is much bigger than I ever realized,
Mhm. Mhm.
So Sri Aurobindo wrote and wrote and wrote. There's an entire library of his books.
I have the Life Divine.
You have the Life Divine. So I never
Mhm.
read the Life Divine. My book, I have 3 books of Sri Aurobindo that I have. So the first one was the Synthesis of Yoga, which I read when I was still in Pondicherry. And then when I came to Auroville, I started to read Savitri. And I want to talk about Savitri. Savitri is Sri Aurobindo's life's work. He worked, it's the longest poem in the English language in existence.
Mhm.
The poetry is absolutely beyond anything you have ever read. And everything is in that poem. All levels of consciousness, all level of unconsciousness, all levels of creation. Everything is in Savitri, written in a way, because it's poetry, it's mantric. So every line is like a mantra. Like one of the lines that I love, where a vast surrender was his only strength. You see, there are just these few words that says exactly what he wants to transmit.
Yes.
A vast surrender was his only strength. This is when King Ashwapati, who is one of the, it's based on an old Indian story. And King Ashwapati, which is Sri Aurobindo, he describes himself. So the whole book is a symbol, a legend and a symbol. It's both a legend based on Savitri and Satyavan, and it's a symbol of him and the mother and their work. And as you read it, and I'm still reading it, I've been reading it since 1972.
Mm,
I'm still reading it. And you read it out loud with somebody because it needs to be spoken. You need to speak it and you need to hear it.
mm.
And you receive, you change. I see people change when they read Savitri. It is the greatest thing I can offer you to read Savitri.
Savitri. It's Savitri.
Savitri. I'll put it in the chat.
Savitri. All eyes. Yeah, I just wanted to let the people know.
I'll put it in the
Yeah.
Savitri by Sri Aurobindo.
Mhm.
There,
Yeah.
you have it.
There it is.
So, and Mother was just really out of this world. You read stories of what people experience. I mean, you know my story, what happened to me, which was also something I couldn't even have imagined happening. Everybody has a unique experience when they see Mother, because Mother sees you the way you don't even know yourself.
She sees the real essence of
Who
the
you
person.
are,
Yeah.
who you are,
Yeah.
beyond what you even understand yourself.
Beyond
And then,
any identity.
right, and then once she said, if I have seen you once, I will never leave you.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
She is not an ordinary human being.
No, she
No.
was.
Not.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
I agree.
And people
Thank you.
have, even now, people who have never met her, if they really connect with her, she guides them. I
Mhm.
have a friend in his dreams, he talks with her. She
Wow.
guides him. She tells him what to do, what not to do. And
Yeah,
so, yeah.
that's something I wanted to ask you about. Um, well, you leave India and you go through a lot of ups and downs. Um, but what, at different points in your life, you mention that you get help, as you're saying with the mother, you get help from beyond the veil. You see
Right.
your father after he dies. And can you talk a little bit about that?
About my father dying.
Well, actually, even before that, I thought it was really interesting that he goes to Auroville to see you
Yes. Yes,
and
because
is
I
so
write to him
inspired.
about Mother and Sri Aurobindo, and he starts reading Sri Aurobindo, and Sri Aurobindo brings everything that my father had ever seen in his kind of open-mindedness,
Mhm.
came together in Sri Aurobindo.
Yeah,
So then he came to visit me, and uh, he got it because he was so intuitive. He came there and he got it. And then when after he had been with me for a little while, he was going to go back to Holland, and he said, "I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, pack up my stuff, and I'm going to come and live in Pondicherry. I don't want to be in the ashram because I don't want to belong to any groups anymore. Been there, done that."
mhm.
But he wanted to be close to the source. So he didn't come for me. He came for Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And
Yeah.
that's where he lived out the rest of his life. Yeah. Yeah.
And he became a sort of spiritual mentor in his own
Yeah.
right to
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because, he was this big hearted, wild man.
Mhm.
He was a wild man.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, there were lots of young people who were attracted to him, and he mentored them, and he took that very seriously. Yeah. His a friend of mine who became friends after he was a Jewish man from America and Israel, kind of a combination, a background. and he had also lived in Holland, so he spoke Dutch. He met my father when he first came to Pondicherry. He met my father, and they made an immediate connection, and they
Mm.
became very deeply connected. And my father mentored him, this Jewish man. He was a dancer, brilliant
Yes.
also. And he
Excuse
told
me.
him he needed to study Kabbalah, because Kabbalah is the Jewish mysticism.
Yes.
My father directed him to study the Kabbalah and guided him through his spiritual journey. And Mikael was his name. Mikael knew my father told him about his past. And they didn't care because they realized, they recognized each other as these spiritual beings. And then whatever happened in the past is just a past, it's not, yeah.
Mm.
So,
Yes.
yeah, he became my spirit brother,
Mm.
Mikael. Yeah, yeah.
And so what prompted you to leave Auroville?
So at one point we get a letter from Daniel's father saying, your mother isn't well enough to travel. We haven't seen you in 10 years. You have our only grandchildren. We're going to send the whole family tickets for 4 months. Well, what do you say? You say yes. It's the only one right answer is to say yes. And that's how we came to California. And what happened after a couple of months, I realized my oldest child had been very ill in India. We almost lost her, actually, when she was 3 months old. She was comatose for 3 days. So we thought it was terrible. We were afraid we were losing her. And so they had pumped her full of antibiotics. She was only 3 months old. So then her immune system was so compromised in India that she wasn't well for more than 3 weeks at a time. She would get the whooping cough or the whatever, diarrhea, boils,
Mm.
impetigo, you name it, all kinds of, it was terrible. So now we are in South California, this South Pasadena, and everything is clean. And there's no heat, there are no bugs, there's no. And after 2 months there, I'm like, it was a shock. I'm looking at her and I suddenly realize I haven't even thought about her health. When something is gone, you don't realize it's gone until
Mm.
you get hit with with a 2x4 in my head. Like, wow, she is strong, healthy, running around. She's fine. She didn't even have as much as a cold any time. And I went to Daniel and I said, we can't go back. He was deeply attached to his work with the village in Auroville. And it was not easy for him. For me, it was very clear. When I'm clear, I go. That's my nature. He had to agree, but it was difficult for him to not go back. And then we came to Santa Cruz.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did your life shift after that, after leaving Auroville? I
Well,
mean,
so when I came here in Santa Cruz, I I knew that I was a healer in my heart, that's what I needed to do. So I began to study. I first studied polarity. There was a
mhm.
teacher in Santa Cruz who was giving workshops in polarity. So that's how I started. And then at some point, I actually went to a massage college, a college that studied massage, but I didn't want to do massage. And I talked with the director and I said, so I was imagining having a private practice with clients, but I didn't want to have strangers in my house in the nude. That just didn't feel right. So I didn't want to do massage, but I wanted to do what they offered was acupressure and hypnotherapy And I said, that's what I want. And I already am certified in polarity. So I want to do energy work with my clients and hypnotherapy so I can take them deeper. And she agreed, and that's what I did. And then I became a certified healer, health practitioner, and had a practice here in Santa Cruz, and loved that work. Loved that
And
work.
at the same time, you were also trying to heal yourself, or were you?
Of course. Well, when you study, especially when you study hypnotherapy, this is when, so I started to take workshops, healing workshops. So I started to do some inner work. I had no idea yet how much work I had to do
Mm,
because I was so dissociated, But
yeah.
so when I was studying hypnotherapy, then the way you study is you practice with one another. So then I would be taken into, when it was my turn, I would be taken into trance. And at one point we were told, you need to meet your shadow. And so that happened. What my shadow was at the time that I could was a wild dog that sunk its teeth into my heart.
Oh,
And I realized there was absolutely nothing I could do to save myself besides loving him. So I put my arms very gently around his furry neck and gave him all the love I could until he released his teeth out of my heart. So
mhm,
that was the beginning. And then when I came out of that, I realized this is me. This is my fury at what has happened to me. My shadow self is a wild dog that wants to kill you.
mm,
So that is where that started.
yeah.
But, and I did a bunch of work over the years, but it was only when I got together with my shaman. Now I am well in my 50s. It is 1996 when I meet him. His name is Hara Ra. The Ra is
Mm,
the sun god, and the Hara is the second chakra in the belly. So it was the belly of the sun. That was his shamanic name that he had chosen. And his practice was to sit for people on psychedelic journeys for their healing. And he got connected with me by his best friend, who was a local psychiatrist, whom I knew, who had come to me for some healing sessions, so he knew my work. And Harava had come across Stanislav Grof's work. And he had pursued psychedelic healing work for himself. He was a profoundly injured human being. His mother was a schizophrenic, paranoid. His father was the owner of a mine, if you can imagine what kind of a person that is. I got a call from this psychiatrist saying, my best friend is a shaman and he's looking for a female healer to do some special healing work. Would you be interested to meet him? And we can't speak about it on the phone. And I'm going, yep. And I meet him, and he wants to do what is called analytic work with me. Interesting for him was that I knew already about analytic work because when I was studying psychology, I had read about so LSD was coming available to psychiatrists, and that there were these female psychiatrists in London who were having their clients, I mean psychiatric clients, in the nude, wrapped in a light blanket, and hold them through their LSD session in the hope to repair their mother bonding. Because the greatest injury happens when we are not bonded with our mother as infants. This is the great tragedy in this country, if you realize that generations of Americans have not been nursed, have not been allowed by the AMA to nurse. The country is deeply injured in the first chakra, in your chakra of belonging to humanity. This is a national wound that America has to come to terms with. I feel here, having grown up in Europe, and when I go back to Europe, I see it. People who go to Europe, they see it. There is an ease in the connection between men and women that barely exists in this country. There's enormous antagonism between men and women. They are afraid of each other because the children, the babies, were not bonded with their mother. You have a deep segregation, separation from your humanity in your body, in your mind, body, soul, emotions. It all goes together. This is a severe, from my perspective. Americans are having a hard time seeing that because you live in it.
Well, my generation did nurse their children, or at least the people I knew.
Good.
I did, and my friends did.
Good, but many did not.
No.
Many, many, many people did not. They were actually, the mothers would receive an injection to dry up the milk so that their breasts would stay pretty for their husbands. Ugh. 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 Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was there a moment when you realized that numbing was costing you something essential?
Yeah. So when he invited me to start working with him, he said the only way you can sit for people on psychedelic journeys is if you have one yourself. You have to have the experience. And it's different from doing a psychedelic on your own or with a friend. When you do it with somebody who knows the territory, who will sit for you, and you set an intention. And so, so I agreed. And I call that chapter in my book, The Turning Point. Because during that session, I'm in a very deep space. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of opening my eyes a little bit, and I'm seeing Harara walking back and forth, pacing. And all of a sudden, he says, "You have a secret." And I go, "Oh, no, not that." But, you're in that space, and it's like, okay, here we go. So I took the plunge. And what happened? I kind of descended down in deep silence. And all of a sudden, I noticed my right shoulder lifting itself off the bed. And I'm looking behind me. And I see a mass grave with white bodies. The Holocaust is behind me, is in my shadow. That is the depth of my shadow, is the Holocaust. And it was shocking, of course. So then in my time with Harara during the rest of the session, I realized that the error of my child's mind, because I loved my father, and my father had been part of that system. He was not directly involved with the Holocaust, but he is certainly part of the system. That when I saw that movie with him in the theater when I was 12, that deeply descended into my being as my ultimate terrifying shadow. And when I came out of that and I realized that that was a mistake, it was not my shadow, it was my father's shadow. And then when I came out of that, I began to become aware of how dissociated I had lived my life. And I discovered that if I took a toke of marijuana, you can't take acid every day. If I took a toke of marijuana, all of a sudden I would know what was going on. I would be upset about something. I didn't know what. I just knew I was upset. I didn't know why. I didn't know what happened that had triggered me. I didn't know what to do. I know nothing but how to deal with myself, really, except living over the top of it all. So then I know, so if I took a toke, all of a sudden, my mind space would open and I would realize, oh, that happened. He said that. My little girl got hurt like this. I filled notebooks upon notebooks with what I felt was my inner child healing work. However, as long as you are altered regularly, you may think you're doing your healing work, but you're not really changing. It doesn't happen. So when I began to realize that, wow, I love marijuana. I love getting stoned. I would sit in my garden and with my roses and feel connected with life. That's what was given to me on marijuana. So yeah, I loved it. Music was better. Nature was more beautiful. Connections with people was more magical. Everything. And I did not believe it was addictive. I thought that
Right.
was government propaganda.
Yeah.
So I thought if it's not addictive, I'm happy to take. And until it was too late and I couldn't stop. And then I actually ended up in the emergency room bottoming out on marijuana, which is for many people fairly unbelievable. Well, I bottomed out because I took a high dose of acid because I knew my problem was in my mind. If I take a enough dose of acid, which I did, I will maybe come out the other side. Well, when you're already pre-psychotic, which I was, then you really lose it. So I lost all bimodal consciousness in that session and became completely crazy and wanted to kill myself. I wanted to kill myself. And so my daughter came to the rescue and she tricked me into the car in the middle of the night, 2:30 in Santa Cruz. And her partner was driving. And I thought we were just going to go for a ride because I couldn't sleep. But I'd been yakking their ears off for hours when they came. And then I realized they were taking me to the emergency room. I was so mad. I said, "Don't take me there, turn around." Well, then she got on the phone with them. I heard that. I'm sitting next to her. She gets on the phone to them and she said, "We are around the corner. It's 2:30 in the night. We arrive in the parking lot by the emergency room. There are two cops by the door, because I'm on an overdose, right? So the cops are warned. There are two cops waiting for me. And I get out of the car and I'm exhausted, of course. I've been going 1,000 miles an hour since 10 o'clock in the morning, and I hadn't slept for a few nights before that. I'm exhausted and I see those cops. And that's when I became meek. I didn't understand it until much later. That is when I hit bottom and I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I gave up. I followed my daughter like a sheep into the emergency room. Unbeknownst to me, she had taken all my whole stash with her and put it on the counter. And one of the cops takes one look in that little box with everything in it. Ketamine, LSD. And he said, "That is 3 felonies right there." And he looks at me. I'm this little old lady, completely crumpled. And he shakes his head, and nothing comes out of that. Now I could have been deported because I'm not a citizen. I still don't know whether my daughter realized what she actually did there. But nothing came of it. And then I was put in for 3 days in a 3-day hold at the behavioral health unit because I had threatened suicide.
Yeah.
And on the last day
But
there,
that
my
was the
daughter,
beginning. That was the beginning of your healing. It's almost as if you needed to experience all of that
yeah,
in order to realize, in order to heal the deepest
yeah.
trauma, the
Because what
deepest.
happens when you go into recovery, where I've
Mm-hmm.
always thought I can do everything myself, I mean, I had to do everything myself from the get-go. So in recovery, you learn to ask for help.
Yeah.
That was not
Which you
in
had
my,
never done because you weren't allowed
never,
to. You were not allowed
never.
to ask for help. Yeah.
No, I don't need any help. I don't need you. How can you help me?
Yeah. You
So
couldn't
when you come
speak
into
your pain.
recovery, yeah, say that again.
You could not speak your pain like
No,
all your life. You had to
that's right.
please the people around
Yeah,
you and be
yeah,
there for them. And
yeah,
it took this
yeah,
addiction
yeah.
to,
I became grateful that I
yeah,
became addicted
yeah,
because it brought me to my senses in the
right.
programs. Because in the
Yeah,
12-step programs, you learn life 101, which I had
yeah,
completely missed.
yeah, yeah,
You learn you can ask for help. You learn to
yeah.
get humble. You learn that you're only responsible for yourself, that you need help and you don't need to help others unless it's the right thing to do. But it was a
Hmm.
compulsion for me. I was a compulsive helper because
Yeah.
that's what gave me self-respect. That gave me satisfaction to be able to help others. And I was good at it, but I hadn't done my own work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then in recovery, that was amazing. And then the best thing in recovery was the ACA program. That's the Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families.
Right.
9 years into my recovery, I went to a 7 a.m. AA meeting every morning for 14 years. Every morning. And it was great because it gave me discipline. Because
Hmm.
discipline was also, don't give me discipline. I grew up with discipline. But I recognized how good it was for me to get up and go and be with people, not alone, and listen to them and speak my own truth, be vulnerable, be honest, and ask for help. Now, in ACA, 9 years into my recovery, I realized, so I have done these 12 steps for my recovery, which is great, but I only got addicted way in my 50s. I've had a whole life before that. I need to do these 12 steps on a deeper level. And I found myself into ACA. And in ACA, you learn to become your own loving parent.
Hmm.
They have an amazing line. It says, you learn to become your own loving parent, and this is the God who does not abandon.
Hmm.
That God is within you. They call
Yeah.
it the loving parent, which is fine. We all have the divine inside of us. We all have love inside of us. We all have I certainly had a lot of capacity to love others. I did my best to love myself, but I didn't really know how. So
Hmm.
that's where I learned to get off my high horse and to really begin to love my little girl. And now I live with her.
Hmm.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
happy. I'm happy.
So your definition of coming home at this point, because we have to open it up
Yeah.
for questions, but I'd like to at least ask you, how would you describe coming home?
I am now home in myself, with myself, in my home, by myself. I'm not needing, I need people, but I don't need anybody to love me, to fill that hole inside of myself. That's done. I'm done. When I hit my 80th birthday, I was free.
Mhm.
And I looked at that and was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. I'm really free. I don't care anymore what anybody thinks about me. I can show up to people. I make eye contact with everyone. I'm not afraid to make a fool of myself or whatever, or to be judged. I don't care anymore. So I'm really free. And I thought, well, we'll see. If a problem comes up, I'll know what to do because I know what to do in my problems. I have learned that. Uh, and I am now almost 84 and I'm free. It happened. I actually got free.
It's beautiful.
It's
It's
possible.
beautiful. Hmm. Do you feel you're still in contact with the mother?
Always.
Yeah,
Always. That doesn't go away.
yeah,
Once you have that connection,
yeah.
it's there. When she left her body in 1973, and we heard early in the morning somebody on a bicycle came by our hut, and Daniel and I were out, just had stepped outside, and he said, Mother has left her body. We kind of, both of us kind of, the world stopped for a moment, because it was a big event.
Sure.
And what I immediately experienced was, oh, now she is right here
Mm,
inside of us. I don't have to write letters to her anymore.
yeah.
She's right here. I called it incorporation. And
Mm,
I said that word to Daniel and he agreed. We both had the same experience. Now she is within us. So,
yes. Yes.
and amazingly, people often experience her when they're with me, which is really such a blessing.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
wonderful. Mm.
yeah, yeah.
So I would say that the your journey with both, I would say, the highest um, level of consciousness, or at least human consciousness, right? And the lowest level of,
Yeah,
bottoming out from addiction
yeah,
makes you an ideal person to help others,
yeah.
because you know
It's
both
the only one
both.
thing that I now show up for. Is I show up
Mhm.
for my book because my book is actually helpful to people. It turns
Yes,
out that the feedback that I get is that people beginning to do their inner work because they read my book. It's like,
yes,
oh
yeah.
yeah,
Well, your whole
yoo-hoo.
journey healing from addiction was so powerful. It was
Yeah,
so
and
powerful
from
and so
childhood
full of,
trauma.
yeah, yeah. Well, the addiction was
Many
all
of us
tied up
have.
with that.
Yeah,
It was, you couldn't heal one without the other, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's open and see if anyone has a question. And Paul apologized. He had to leave, but he said he really enjoyed your talk very, very
Thank you.
much.
Good, thank you.
Sorry. Anybody have a question or a comment? And please, if you do, make sure that you have your video on or put it in the chat and I'll read it.
Suzanne.
Yes, I do have a question. And thank you so much for your sheer honesty and humility in sharing this with us. I really enjoyed it too. I am curious. At one point, you said, well, oh no, there's the shadow, right? And the shadow part of the secret you were keeping from yourself about your background. And I was wondering how you integrated that. You kind of said that, and then you shifted direction. Can
It's
you
a
describe?
long path, You don't just integrate something like that overnight.
Well, no.
No, if you read my book, it's the rest of my life, really. It's about becoming who I am. It's
Well,
freeing
that
myself.
the dog that embodied the shadow.
Yes,
I
yes,
was thinking that is a very powerful figure, you know, and you embrace the dog.
Yeah.
And that is certainly a huge step.
Yeah, that was a big step, but it was
Yeah.
only a first step.
Yeah, because
So
our
when-
shadow is actually holds the gift to our understanding who we are. It holds the gift because it represents that which we have suppressed.
Yeah.
You know, and that we need to integrate in order to be whole. But it's a, you know, we think of it as a negative because we have all this projection about it, but it's actually the thing that we need for balance, because we've gone too far in trying to avoid it. We go too far in the opposite direction, which was, in your case, to please everyone, to be the perfect wife, to never, ever, you know, confront people we love with our needs.
So that is my actual shadow, is the dog, right?
Yeah.
The other one was a shadow that I took on from my father.
Mm.
But the anger of what had happened to me, the rage. So I have done a lot of processing, as you can imagine, and I have raged and raged. I have stomped those nuns into little black and white powder. I have really, really allowed myself to have all my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
you allowed yourself to have all of your feelings.
Yes.
Including the negative ones, including the hateful ones.
Well, they're not negative once you own them.
Well, yeah.
There's gifts in there was a gift in my anger. It's like standing up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, destroying the abuse that I experienced, you know, destroying fighting for myself. I had to.
Don't you think that's kind of like an archetype of women? We're women everywhere in a patriarchal world.
Oh, we all have to have our rage.
Dominantly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Yeah. We're no more anybody's opinion.
Yes, you were still fighting that when you went into your addictive behavior.
Oh, yeah.
You were still working on it, even though you realized it still took you a long time.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, that's something we all should know. It's not just the aha of, oh, there it is.
No. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I had an aha moment. I thought, now I am free.
Yes, throughout the book, there's
aha
moments.
Thing comes down and whacks you around the head, and oops, no, I'm not free yet.
What I heard in that, and then I'll be quiet and let other people have a question if they have one, is that you came to the point where you're so much with yourself and loving yourself that you don't really care what other people think of you.
No, you know, when I first got,
in a good way.
I want to tell you a little story. The first time I came to Pondicherry, I heard that Mother had said, as long as you care what other people think of you, you cannot live your truth.
Mm.
I heard that and I went, oh my God.
That's it.
I knew I was very long distance away from that. And I was.
Well, you know, one person has pointed out to me, their truth is truth in quotes, but everything is a perspective of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So why worry about other people's perspective? Maybe you can learn something.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's your experience, your truth.
Yeah. And find your guidance where it comes to you. You know, I have a wonderful shamanic healer in town, this woman, and my last healing session with her, that was it. We did it. But I needed help. Yeah, and I got help.
Okay. I want
The
to say
helpers will come to
thank
you.
you.
When the
Thank you.
student is ready, the helper appears.
Yes.
Thank
It may
you
be
for
on
that.
either side of the veil. Right? Could be on this side, could be from the other side. But help comes always.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Thank you, Suzanne. Kathy put something in the chat. Whoops, wait a minute. She said, thank you so much for this captivating story. So insightful to see ourselves and greeted fully.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? No? No question?
Well, if no one else does, can I do one more thing?
Sure.
Please.
Because you see, now I'm of the generation that my dad was in World War II.
Yeah.
And my dad was a pilot, shot down, stayed with the French underground, went through all the stuff and was betrayed by a double agent in Paris. And he was taken with other flyers, Americans, Brits, and others in a group of about 180 some. And they were taken to Buchenwald. And they were there as prisoners for about 4 months or so. And a lot of things happened without going into details. But
Yeah.
I am quite well aware of this. And within the last 10 years, I have been to a reunion with some of the people who helped him during that time. Most of the men survived it by sheer luck. They were taken as prisoners to a legitimate Stalag prison camp. But they saw a lot of things. So I feel within myself that I also carry, because I know a lot about it and I researched it.
And it was your father.
But how do we deal with our ancestral karma? Did I say that? How would you look at that? You had a client that came to you and they had karmic problems from the past and they knew about some of it. How would you go about helping them heal it?
Well, just unearth as much of the truth as you can, so that you become more and more aware of the father's trauma, the generation before you, because he carries that into his life with his children.
Yes,
It's unavoidable.
carry it genetically.
It's unavoidable. And to become aware of what is you and what is the grief or other emotions that you carry that actually come from him.
Mm-hmm.
And probably need to get help to see if you can differentiate yourself, who you are, and what you imbibed from him unconsciously, so that you begin to clear yourself lovingly from his shadow.
Yes.
And to see how it affects you and has affected you, because it's unavoidable. Yeah. And then begin to work and find your own freedom and who you actually truly are. It's a job. I don't have a simple method. You just keep showing up and keep doing the work,
Yeah.
There's not a simple answer to a healing. It's like it's a journey.
From my experience, I would have to agree with everything that you said. I'm posing a question, because aren't we all going through our healing journey?
Yeah.
Of course.
So, is there tips from others that we can learn and also share in the joy of their victory?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I realized I didn't show your book, and here it is. And can you say something, Andrea, about the title, The Pressing Stone?
So first of all, just seeing my little face is so moving to me, because she's so
very moving
vulnerable.
picture. Yeah.
She is so serious.
Mm.
So I'm looking out of a train window, and you can see my mother's shoulders behind me. My mother is actually standing behind me.
Oh. Mm.
Yeah. And I'm looking out at the train window, and I am looking. And that is how I spent my childhood, is looking.
Yes. And not
What is
speaking.
going on?
Mm-hmm.
What are these people doing? I'm looking. Now, the pressing stones is a symbol from the Veda. And Sri Aurobindo translated the Rig Veda. And he is the first human being on the planet who was able to actually translate the Rig Veda according to his ability to see the truth.
Mm.
There have been translations, of course, in India of the Rig Veda, but the Vedas are full of symbolisms. They talk about the cows in the cave and the horses and the this and that. Well, the cows are the symbols of light. The word in Sanskrit for cow is also light.
Hmm.
And the light, our light, is in the cave of our subconscious. And his job is to bring our light out of the cave. I mean, even Plato talked about the cave.
Yes.
We are not seeing the truth because we're in a cave. And so in these hymns comes the image of the pressing stones, and they symbolize the difficulties we are given in our lifetime to clear ourselves from our erroneous conceptions, our difficulties, our ignorance. Every one of you knows that when you have a real difficulty, when you're in it, it's really difficult. But when you come through it, there's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
There's a gift of more understanding, of enlightenment that comes after you go through a difficulty. And ultimately, when we go through all of our difficulties, all these stones that have been pressing on our being to clear ourselves through the big cosmic sea, that's the other symbol, and out comes the wine or the honey of delight. And that delight is actually the essence of life. The universe was created because the Supreme wanted the delight of being, wanted to express it and see it, be known. And we, in all of creation at this point, have a choice to become aware, for the divine to become aware of itself. Because we are that. Everything is that. The entire creation comes out of one. The one is everywhere and everything. And when I become aware that I am one with that, I can begin to become aware of being one with you and with all of humanity. And that the healing that each one of us does is not just done for ourselves, it's done for humanity. We are all a little cell in the totality of being, in the totality of the being of humanity. We're all unique and we're all connected. We're all unique and we're the same. It's like the one is the one and the one is the multitude. Yeah. And the essence, our learning, our journey is to come back to the one. Out of the differentiation, to stay unique, because you're going to do it in your way. Because the divine wants to know what it's like to be you.
Yes.
Because that is what we are. We are all parts and parcel of the one. And the more we become aware of that, the more we can be in the delight of life and in the love of being with each other.
Beautiful. Well, on that note, I'm afraid we have to stop.
It's good.
A beautiful note to stop on. And thank you. I think you've inspired all of us
I hope.
with your journey and with your insights and with your compassionate perspective on even the perpetrators. I loved in your book how you talk about having compassion for the perpetrators too.
Yeah.
And that's very relevant even today in our crazy, chaotic society.
Yeah. In our society, you commit one crime, you go to jail, and you are forever a criminal. And the society forgets that you are a human being. Yeah. So a lot of work to be done.
A lot of work. And we start right here. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you so much for having me. It was delightful.
It was delightful here too. And thank you all for attending. We will see you next time. And I thank you again for your book. And have a wonderful rest of your enlightened life.
And I wish you the same. I wish you joy in your life.
Thank you.